Hello, Dell. Thank you so much for getting on the phone with me today, or I should say on the Zoom with me today, and telling your story. We were just chatting and really talking about the importance of hope and empowerment and education for others that are facing the diagnosis of cancer. So thank you so much for joining us. And let's get started with if you would talk a little bit about your diagnosis.
Yeah, sure. I think no one really expects a diagnosis of cancer. I mean, people might suspect it if they've had a history in their family or something, but I really didn't. And I was in the fitness and health field for decades. So I was eating right, I was exercising. I was rarely, if ever, sick, and I really thought I was in excellent health. So when I got the call from my doctor, it was a Friday, and she told me that I had cancer. I had endometrial cancer, but not the common kind, the rare aggressive kind that only 10% get. But those words meant nothing to me at the time,
Yeah.
and you're just trying to listen and absorb what they're saying. And then she said, I have you scheduled for an oncology consultation on Monday and a CAT scan. So I hung up with that news, and I just, it just didn't hit me, and thought about it on the weekend. And then I went to that oncology consult and got the CAT scan. And then I just realized that I had some work to do. I had to get some research. So I started going to all the top New York City hospitals and talking to their oncologists. And I was basically getting the same news, that this was aggressive, it was not curable, success rate
Mhm.
was not good. And they all recommended surgery right away. So I just was sort of in a panic state at the time, and
Yeah.
it's driven a little bit by fear, uh,
Yeah.
uncertainty, and a little bit of disbelief. So I just went and got the surgery right away because I figured that was something I had to do given the information I had.
Yeah. And what stage were you diagnosed? And did
Well,
they give you any life expectancy?
yeah. After the surgery, the pathology report came back, and that's when I
Okay.
next call that it was stage 4.
Okay.
That unfortunately, we're sorry to tell you, but it was like an 18% chance of survival, and with the treatment, and that they recommended I do chemo right away. And I really wasn't expecting that. Uh, when I went to talk to other doctors, and they were giving me the same thing, that it's just not that survivable. Probably a year, and if you did survive that year, within the next year for sure, it would come back, and then you wouldn't survive that.
Mm.
So I decided to go to a small oncology, uh, you know, little office, thinking maybe I'd get more personalized care, maybe a different approach. And that doctor told me, in no uncertain terms, that this was uncurable. And do you want me to tell you, how long you have to live? And I was stunned that he was, going to give me a date. And
Mm.
I paused, and I was so grateful. I just said no, and I left. And I was really shaken by that, because I heard that, when people are given a date, that, they usually die on that day because they trust their doctor, they believe in it. And so it's a self-fulfilling, prophecy. It's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I think they've done studies on that where they've told people that they have terminal cancer, 3 months to live, and then they end up doing the autopsy and they didn't even have cancer, but they died in 3 months.
yeah, I know it's really
Uh,
scary,
It's the
right?
placebo effect. It's our cells hearing what
Yeah, which
what
is
we
the other
believe.
thing, about your thoughts and how they affect your cells. But, I didn't know any of this at that time.
Yeah.
You're
And
just sort of running on, I,
terrifying.
yeah, I wasn't accepting what anyone said. And when I went to all of these hospitals and I was talking to these top doctors, and I thought I was getting second and third opinions. And then I realized that I'm only getting one opinion because they all went to the same medical school. They all have the same toolbox. They all learn the same thing. So they're giving me the same response. That's all they
Uh,
know. But
Statistics, they're
yeah,
giving you the statistics. And
based on their toolbox.
yeah, yeah. And sorry, when was your diagnosis?
My diagnosis was in April of 2019.
2019.
Yeah,
Well, you've surpassed their
I have. And
year.
my oncologist is so happy and so surprised, but she doesn't believe that I'm still here, and she's glad for me, but she doesn't want to know what I've been doing.
Oh, she doesn't.
No, I tried telling her even from the very beginning when I was getting my chemo, and I didn't want to take all of those prescription drugs that they give you because they're heavy duty, they're addictive, they have terrible side effects. So I didn't take them. And I was using, like, for the nausea and pain, I was using CBD, and it was working great. And it's natural, not toxic. And I would want to share this with her. And I'd say, maybe your other patients would benefit from knowing this. This is great. And no, she was just sweetly smiled, and that's
Yeah.
you're not going to change the system that way.
Yeah. And it's tough for them also because it's not an approved treatment. So for them to endorse it or to be able to say it to somebody else is tough because they could be putting their license in jeopardy.
Yeah, and I realized that wall is there.
Yeah.
So, there was no reason for me to have any more conversations because I wasn't going to make any headway. So that was a little enlightening. And then towards the end of my chemo, which was it's very difficult to endure. And I almost quit before the end, but I stayed with it, and they
And
kept recommending radiation.
and really quick, how much chemo and what chemo?
Oh, I did the 6 rounds of Taxo and carboplatin.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are pretty harsh
Yeah.
drugs.
Yeah. And were you doing them every week, every three
Every
weeks,
5 weeks.
every 3 weeks?
Yeah, except when your white blood cell count went down too low, and then they had to give you the Neulasta, which is
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you do anything complementary to help support the chemo? Any
Well,
fasting or anything of that nature?
I didn't know about the fasting at that time. I knew enough not to do the glutathione, and I was doing high dose IV vitamin C on my off chemo weeks.
Okay.
And then supplements. That's all I knew at the time, that I was
Yeah.
going through that. But when they recommended radiation more than once, and I did go talk to the radiation oncologist, and they were really pushing hard for it. And I just drew back and I did some research, and I found studies that said that there was no greater survivorship in those who did chemo and radiation versus those that just did chemo.
Oh,
So I
okay.
thought, why are they pushing this? If this is what the
If it
studies are
doesn't change the outcomes,
right.
what's the benefit?
Exactly. And there's a lot of downside to it. So, so that was the end. I walked away from that with them telling me that there was a 97% chance of it recurring. And once it did, they're really, because they're resistant to the chemo. So that was going to be all they could offer me. So I knew I had to do more work. They wanted me to just wait and watch and, do regular CAT scans. And when it came back, sorry.
And enjoy your life and get your affairs in order.
Yeah. So that's when I started calling all over the world, actually. I spoke to doctors all over the United States, Mexico, Germany, even Thailand, to find out how would they address this, and what were their options. And just realizing that because these doctors said I was going to die and they had nothing else to offer me didn't mean that there wasn't anything else out there.
Yeah,
Just meant they didn't know about it. So
right.
I did go, then I recovered. I finished my chemo in November of 2019. And
2019.
I recovered from the chemo, did some research, waited for the holidays to pass, and then I went to a clinic in Mexico.
Great.
And yeah, that was amazing because the people there were so warm and supportive. They gave you a community. I mean, I went alone, but I never felt alone.
That's
Uh,
beautiful. And what was the clinic?
it was Hope for Cancer.
For cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd spoken to many clinics, both in the United States and elsewhere. Some were way too expensive, and others, this one I thought had a nice balance. Uh,
Yeah.
and they could do things that we couldn't do in the United States. I mean, not even really radical things like IV curcumin.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Crazy.
yeah, so I was happy that that existed, and I was very grateful to be able to go there. But 3 weeks isn't going to change the course of your health, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I came home, I had to do more work.
Yeah.
I continued some of the therapies. You were supposed to go back in 3 months, but then COVID hit, and
Oh,
I I couldn't go back. So I did virtual visits and phone visits, and they would send me what I needed in the mail. But that wasn't really sustainable either. So, I did some more readings, and there was one of the most important things I think I read was the first thing that struck me really was Radical Remission by Dr. Kelly Turner,
yeah.
because it gave me hope that people like me who were told they were going to die, or they had done stage 4, they had exhausted all that conventional medicine could offer them, that they didn't have to die.
Yeah.
And so that was really critical to me. But I felt like I was just desperately trying everything, everything. I was 100 pills a day, every therapy I could, and I had no order to it. I just was trying
Mhm.
anything I could to stay alive, right?
Yeah.
It was a full-time job.
Yeah.
But it was working because my PET scan showed no evidence of disease. But, I believed that I don't believe that. I knew I had an aggressive cancer. I knew that it had a high chance of recurrence, and that just because the scan said nothing was happening at the moment, didn't know that it would come
Yeah.
at a future time.
You
So
weren't feeling exactly comfortable and just saying, okay, I'm good.
yeah, no, I couldn't take my foot off the accelerator at all, but I was still doing so much that it wasn't sustainable. And
Yeah.
then I ran across Dr. Nasha Winter's book, right?
Yeah.
Metabolic Approach to Cancer. And it made sense to me, and it gave me a sense of calm because there was order. There was a roadmap. I just needed to find out where my imbalances were, what was going on inside my body to make things go awry, and then correct it. It
Yeah.
just makes sense because I truly believe in your body's innate ability to heal.
Yeah.
You need
Absolutely.
to know what you need.
Hmm.
That's it's you can't find what you're not looking for. So when you go to these our regular Western doctors, they're just looking for certain markers, and they're not looking deeper than that. And that's what Dr. Nasha's book laid out for you. You could
Yeah.
take your terrain 10 questionnaire. Where are my imbalances? Where do I need to focus? How do I do that? And then go to the chapters that give you the guidance. So
Right.
that I was very grateful for that, because then I found some peace of mind myself.
And the empowerment to
That
say, oh,
too.
okay.
Yeah,
No, and to your original point about being healthy and fit, I think the book teaches us that what we think is healthy and fit, one, is different, and two, we don't know how our modern environment is affecting us. So we
exactly.
can be physically doing all of the things right, but have things that are playing out in our environment that we can't see, that we don't know about, that we don't feel. And so it's bringing to light those things.
Yes. And you don't think about those things because you're busy
Right.
going about your day. So you're not thinking about the toxins in your skincare products or the air you're breathing, or, what you're not not aware of it. So, and also the emotional side, right? The stress, the traumas, all of these things impact your cellular health, but you're not aware of it. And then
Yeah.
listening to Dr. Seyfried, right? Thomas Seyfried, and his discoveries on what feeds cancer cells and how you can control that, and how he's had success with, glioblastomas and things that were incurable by controlling the diet, the power of the keto diet. I mean,
Yeah.
so much information out there that could save lives, but people just aren't aware of it. And that's the sad part.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so many times you get the diagnosis and you think you're just helpless. And that's kind of the mindset that we've lived in. And it's about the doctor needing to heal us. And not learning that there's things we can do to heal ourselves. And then just not having the education, I think, in the last 10 years with podcasts and YouTubes, and that has really been able to help us individually start looking for answers, and finding them. And Thomas Seyfried and his work has been absolutely incredible. And then, of course, the work that Dr. Nasha has been doing for 30 years in working with patients that have terminal diagnosis, including herself, right?
Yeah.
It's really about empowerment, but how do we innately get back to that place, you know?
Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to care more about your health and your staying alive than you. And just recognizing that you need to ask questions, that you can't blindly trust, that you need to educate yourself, that the information is out there. You need to take the responsibility for going out and finding it. And right now I was at that point before where I was figuring it out on my own. There was no one for me to turn to or talk to about it or get information from, except finding these books, reading everything I could on it, and listening to these podcasts. And thank God this information is there. But again, first, in order to look for the information, you've got to
Hmm.
question what's before you. Is this the only way? Is this the best way for me? And maybe it is, but you need to educate yourself and make that decision for yourself.
How hard is that to do when you're in a state of fight or flight?
Yeah, it's really hard, especially if you're doing it alone.
Yeah.
You have to really create that objective space and and do the work because that's the only way when you're in a situation with a diagnosis or prognosis like I had, you have no choice,
Yeah.
unless you want to you know, accept that as your truth. And I wasn't ready to do that.
Yeah. Well, good for you. And at some point in this process, when you read Dr. Nasha's book, did you end up finding a practitioner that had been through the metabolic approach to cancer training program, or what has been kind of your guide and your compass, um, you know, now since treatment?
Yeah. Now I do, but I didn't then. What I was doing was creating a team, my care team, because I would talk to so many doctors. I did so many consults, and naturopaths, oncology specialists, integrative oncologists, all sorts of people. And they all had different insights and something special to offer. So I wasn't willing to just have one
Yeah,
doc.
it's
So
brilliant.
I had a team of them, and it was really hard at one point to keep up with all of them because they all had something different to say, and I couldn't do it all.
And I'm sure some conflicted with the others, or some didn't support the others.
Yeah, but some would offer treatments that the other wasn't aware of, or different ways to stack therapies that made sense. And so everything was valuable, but I've since narrowed down to, just a couple of doctors. And one of them, when I dug deeper and found out that on Dr. Nasha's site, you can find a practitioner that's educated in the metabolic approach.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So I have two of those
Oh,
doctors,
you do. Yeah.
but
And if you want to mention them, you can mention them.
they're very different in their approach,
Yeah.
and in their focus. So they're both very valuable to me. Actually, have actually a couple of other doctors. I just can't give them up because I may visit them through telemed less frequently, but they understand that I'm just calling intermittently for their input, that
Yeah.
they're not central, but they respect me for that. They're not threatened or annoyed.
Yeah.
Um, and that's important for people to find someone who accepts their questioning
Yeah.
and, and is not intimidated by it or doesn't dismiss them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because if we think about in our professional lives and in our professional careers, we are throughout our entire careers making decisions based off of gathering information and gathering, expert or subject matter experts in different areas to determine how we're going to move forward in our business. And we collect a bunch of people's thoughts and experiences, and then we come up with our own answer that's going to work for us. And oftentimes we don't do that with our own health. We
Right.
just tell me what to do,
Yeah.
and
But
I'll,
it's a little trickier too, because you're dealing with individuals with egos, and it depends on how receptive they are. And the doctors that I finally, have on my care team, they respect my inquiry, and they they help empower me.
nice.
I think
And
that's true too.
if you don't mind sharing the doctors from our training, who are those doctors that you're working with?
Dr. Christy Kesselring is one,
Oh, yes, yes.
and Dr. Miriam Rahab is another. Um,
Two incredibly, incredibly brilliant doctors.
Right. And I do have to mention Dr. Linda Tao, who's I was going to her office for my IVs all through from the beginning of my treatment. So she is also part of my care team. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm so great to hear. Yeah, incredibly, incredibly brilliant doctors.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful to this community, Dr. Naisha's community, because not only because of the support, but the exchange of knowledge and information, and this community of trained physicians that she's offered, who are all like-minded, but come from different backgrounds, so different perspectives. And it's invaluable. I don't know where I'd be without it. I really, truly think that this is what saved my life. And
Yeah,
I continue to work. It's a lifestyle. I'll never be done.
yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I want to point out in who you're working with, because a lot of times people think that the doctors that are coming through our program are just naturopaths. So I get that a lot, and they say, "Oh, well, I have a naturopath doctor." And what I want to say is, one, you are working with two MDs. So Dr. Christy Kesslering, who came through the program, she's a radiation oncologist
I know.
who
And
is now
one of the
just
reasons I
really
chose it.
yeah, yeah. And now she's really just doing metabolic oncology. And
Yes.
then Dr. Miriam Rahoff is a triple board certified doctor. And what's beautiful about our training program for clinicians is these clinicians are of all different backgrounds, MDs, NDs, DOs, and they're all able to sit at the same table and do case studies and collaborate about patients. Egos aside, it's not about their background or their training. It's about what they're learning and how they can apply what others are learning and how
They
they can,
care about the patient
yeah,
first.
they can learn from the patients,
Mhm.
right? And we can collectively share that. It's such an amazing community, and community we talk about, like it is a community.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful. And I'm so grateful that I've found it and become a part of it, because since then I have also become more educated in the terrain approach and want to help other people um, get through their cancer journey as successfully as I have so far.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. And so how does things look now? I would imagine, because this is the process that we teach, is one, we teach individuals how to read their own labs. And I just want to say that sometimes that's hard to do in the beginning when you're in fight or flight. And so you definitely want help with that, which is where advocates come in and being able to
Yes.
really help with that. Because practitioners are hard to get in front of on a consistent basis, and advocates are really there to support that process. But is part of your kind of standard routine now reviewing your labs frequently, adjusting as needed? Kind of what does that look like?
Yes, I'm doing labs right now. I'm doing them more frequently just to keep tabs on everything. And I've also changed my testing. I'm done with PET scans and CAT scans. I've had so many, and I'm really, radiation is a carcinogenic, and I'm
Yeah.
afraid of that also. So Prenuvo
Okay.
is a wonderful testing that I've started, and Signatera. People should know that there are alternate ways to test,
Yeah.
aren't harmful,
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just recently got your pre-nuvo done. I just
I
recently got
did.
mine done as well.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So, and so far so good. But
Oh, awesome. So
but
you
it
got your results back.
yes,
Yeah.
so still
And
happy.
they were
Good, they're clear. They're clear.
amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Part of me wants to go back to that doctor who told me he was going to give me my expiration date, and told me this was incurable, and, do you want to know when you're going to die? And I would love to go back to him. I'm 4 years out now. So
That is absolutely amazing.
yeah, I'm gonna,
Maybe he'll see this video.
maybe, I doubt it. He's got a wall full of magazine covers, the best doctor, and which he proudly showed me when I walked in.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. And we hear that all the time. And I'm sure you've heard that from other people too, that they have the best doctor, world renowned, or best doctor that money can buy, which I often find funny because if you have insurance, you're not paying cash for them, right? That's all what's built through insurance. But you have these really highly regarded oncologists, and I want to say that their education and their knowledge is incredible, and the amount of time that they spend going to medical school and all of the things that they learn. I mean, that truly takes brilliance, and they are brilliant. But like you said at the beginning, and what they learn.
Right. Right. And that's the trick. I mean, they are brilliant and in what they do, but if it's not going to serve you, then you can't accept that as your truth. It
Right.
doesn't mean that there's no other way to think about something or no other actions that you can take. And that's what people need to know. But it is hard, even when you have an awareness level, like it's hard for people to buck up against the system a lot of times. And when I went from one of my last MRIs, I had learned about gadolinium, and I have so many toxins in my body from the chemo, the platinum levels and uh, all of that, and the gadolinium.
Mm,
So I did not want any more of that. So I had to struggle to get a prescription for an MRI without
without it. Yeah.
and then I was the only one waiting, in New York City Hospital, again, going back to one of the best places for my MRI, because I wanted the most up-to-date equipment. And I was waiting for such a long time, and I went and I said, "What is going on?" They said, "Well, there was a mistake. It says that it's without contrast, so we're calling your doctor to make sure to get them to send us a new prescription with contrast." And I said, "No, please don't do that. I don't want it." So when they agreed, I went in, and the tech there said, "Oh, you don't want to have the contrast? Why not?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, I never thought about that. That was good. That's good to know." So people just need to talk to other people
Yeah.
and let them know that they have choices.
Yeah.
You don't, not even aware you have choices.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need to be your own self-advocate, especially when you're doing those things. And a lot of the things that we teach is, how to do chemo, and support that, and how not to ask for certain things in your IV bags and things of that nature, and how to do fasting. And a lot of times you'll get a lot of pushback,
Mhm.
um, because they know what they know, and this is the protocol, and you follow the protocols. But we have to be our own self advocates, because sometimes we need a good, really integrative approach. But we have to be able to say what we think is right for us.
I know. And the other thing I think people need to do is to trust their instincts. Because when I was first got the news and I was going to like Memorial Sloan Kettering, and he was talking to me about, the poor chance of survival and the treatment. And I know from my history that I'm very sensitive to drugs, to medications. And so
Mm,
I asked him, can I do a lower dose? Because I know I won't react well. And he said, no, we're going to do the maximum tolerated dose. And then if you can't handle it, we'll back off. And I thought, that seems like backwards a way of
yeah.
thinking to me. It didn't make sense. And I
Yeah.
did find another oncologist who was very happy to give me an effective dose, but it was lower than maximum tolerant.
Oh, good. So your
Yeah.
chemo was not maximum tolerated dose.
No, no, it
Oh,
was it
wow.
was like 70%, which she said it's still effective, but it won't be
Yeah.
as challenging for me. And it's a good thing because I could barely survive that, you know.
Yeah.
And but that was my instinct. I didn't have information at that point. I didn't know about maximum tolerated dose at that time. I just
Yeah.
knew that he was being very, very rigid, and it didn't line up with me, his attitude. And
Yeah. And that is one of our recommendations, is when doing chemo, to be able to ask your oncologist to do a smaller dose, a more targeted dose, but not the maximum, because the maximum just takes such a toll on our immune system, and we don't need that.
no, and we need our immune system to help fight the cancer.
Yeah, and it doesn't change the outcomes by giving that heavy dose. And it can really, really wreak havoc on you. But if we can do a more tolerated dose, we can essentially likely improve our chances of being able to tolerate it, and the efficacy of it.
Exactly. And I wish I had known about the fasting, right? At the time, I didn't know. There's so much information that even if you are doing conventional chemotherapy, like not doing the maximum dose and fasting before and the day of, just other things that can help enhance the efficacy and reduce the toxic side effects, but they need to know, you know.
Yeah,
And that's not going against the grain. It's just enhancing the status quo, right?
yeah,
So I don't know why that can't be integrated into standard treatment, you know? Maybe it
yeah.
will be. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully, our community can raise enough awareness, and our data platform can track enough data to show the data behind doing the smaller doses.
Yeah.
But I often think that it's more insurance driven. I think that insurance looks at the clinical trials and they think, oh, okay, more is better. And so, might as well hit it really hard, and don't realize that that's oftentimes what ends up
Killing.
making somebody go, yeah, I mean, if your white blood cells get so low, your bone marrow can no longer support and make enough cells to support the process, or the cancer fighting cells to support the process. There's just a number of different things that can happen, and oftentimes it is the drug that kills
Mhm.
us and not the cancer. And so, if there was some changes we could make in the industry and getting them to reevaluate that, it would be huge. And again, I think this is just where, there's a disconnect between the pharmaceutical world and the insurance world. And we have data now. We have patients, we have data, and we can start to look at this stuff a little bit closer.
Yeah. And the more people that speak out about their unexpected success, and outliving their expiration date, the more hope that we'll give other people. And and hopefully we can get that information out to them,
Yeah.
because it could save a lot of lives that,
Yeah.
you know.
How much has this cancer diagnosis and this process that you've been through for the last 4 years, how much has it changed your life?
Oh, tremendously. It has. I mean, I focus on my health every day. I'm always thinking about, the water I'm drinking, the food I'm eating, which I just, so busy before you're going about your day and you're unaware. Like, I take time every day for self-care, which I never did before. Doing things to reduce stress because I had no idea how damaging stress could be. And so, I mean, when I talked about how healthy I was, I mean, but I was always under a constant state of stress
Mhm.
for so many years that it was literally killing me, but I wasn't aware of that. So now that I am doing some lifestyle techniques, breath work, I do sauna, use red light therapy, of course, exercise, and I have air filters all over the place and water filters. And it just, there's just so much that we can control, changing your skincare products, because your skin's the largest organ. You're absorbing all those chemicals in your skin, the hair dyes, people just take
Yeah.
health for granted and the life we live for granted without realizing the impact of EMFs and all the other toxins around us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be 50 this year. And I get all the time people say, what do you put on your face? How do you stay looking so young? And I tell them castor oil and coconut oil and buckthorn seed oil. I kind of rotate between all of those. And they're like, I would never put that. I'm like, oh. But we don't need all of these expensive creams and products because these natural oils have so many things in them that help to produce collagen and elasticity. They help with wrinkles. They help with all of the fine lines. They give your skin the moisture it needs. There's
Yeah,
just so many easy things out there, and we're so resistant to it. It kind of baffles me sometimes.
it's just the media, we're sort of brainwashed, you know.
Yeah.
So, but you're glowing. You look beautiful. So it
Thank you.
works.
Thank you. I will say, 15 years ago is when I started with the coconut oil on my face. And I wasn't focused on health like I am now. I didn't know anything about the metabolic health. I didn't even understand any of that. But it goes down to that vanity thing. So I feel like before we always thought health was about weight and
Yeah.
about how we looked right on the outside. And a friend of mine had said that that his mom was able to get rid of all of her age spots with coconut oil.
Oh,
I started putting coconut oil on my face that day. It was like 15 years ago. And that was the funny thing is all of my little hormone spots did go away. But you know what also went away? Is I had a bunch of chickenpox scars around my eyes, and I had chickenpox when I was like 2. And a year later, I was like, I don't have chickenpox scars anymore.
yeah, that's
You
amazing.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of, I'd had them all my life, and then they just, went away with those. So I did do it initially for vanity. And now
Yeah.
I just know that it's what's healthy for me.
Yeah. And you've seen the evidence, so it works. Yeah. The power of nature. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
well, grounding, right? Getting back out in nature, sunlight, fresh air, the
Yeah.
basic. Sounds so simple that how could it really mean anything? But it's the basis of all life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of like lifestyle changes, and you talk about stress. So before you were focused on health and all of those things, but the stress that you were dealing with, what has been kind of the biggest change in your lifestyle to alleviate the stress?
I think part of it is, and people need to look at what their stresses are, whether it's at work or at home, their relationships, what is nurturing to them and what is weighing on them. My son speaks and he talks about, he's a motivational speaker and he talks about your floaters and your anchors, and
Right.
you need to just because as important as the clean air and clean water is having healthy, positive relationships around you, people who are going to support you. Even when I'm going through all of my sort of alternative, I hate to say alternative, but uh, whatever term you want to use,
Complementary.
complementary therapies. My friends who are really sort of hardcore, conventional, they still supported me, even though they didn't understand what I was doing or why, and they didn't believe in it. They supported me as a person. If
Yeah.
you think this is right, then we'll respect you and we'll support you. And those are the people that you want to surround yourself with, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So true. We often don't realize the impact that negative relationships can have on our stress.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we just think, okay, I'm used to this now. This is just my life. And we don't realize the toll that that's taking on us on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
And then also just the hustle and bustle of life. It's really easy to just be in that mud.
Multitasking and racing from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. And that's the way, we in America, strive to be, accomplish as much as we can. And we don't recognize that necessarily the cost it's taking on our health.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, what I find very interesting is that the younger generation, people that are in their 20s now, they really strive for that work-life balance. And I remember when I first started seeing this, I thought, oh, they're not hard workers. And I realized they're teaching us something.
yes, that's right. Balance. It's all about balance, right?
Yeah. And I think that that generation is going to be what's going to they're going to be the ones that are the movement for change too, as well as health. They're so sick. We're getting sicker, as we are older, but that generation is born sick and they are dealing with disease. They're dealing with mental health issues. They're dealing with suicide and bipolarism and schizophrenia. They're dealing with cancer. They're dealing with all of these diseases, which are metabolic disorders.
Yes.
And so, they're a huge part of us changing this huge ship and raising awareness as well. And the more that we can get out there and teach them by example, the more that they can learn these tools as well.
Yeah. And it seems that more younger people are getting cancer than ever before. It used to be a disease of old age, right? Um, but I'm shocked when I go to these meetings and I see so many people, younger people with cancer. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's just our environment.
Yeah, it's our environment. Well, colorectal cancer, which used to be a cancer of 65 and older, is now the fastest growing cancer between adolescent young adults from ages 15 to 39.
Wow.
Yeah. And colorectal cancer is really about everything that's going in, right? So going in and coming out. And our food is making us so incredibly sick. What they're spraying on the crops, all of the processed foods, all of the things that they're putting in there. And we talk about diseases like autism and you think about all these kids with these peanut allergies, something's in the water, something's in the soil.
Yeah, it is. Glyphosate, it's all over. And, people just, it's awareness. Awareness is what's key,
Yeah.
education and getting the word out, because we have to help save each other outside of the system, because it's going to take too long to do it inside,
The system is so big and it's so broken and it is so impossible to affect change quickly in a big broken system. So yes, we all have to come together, which is why you being on this call today and being willing to share is so important. I know it's hard and it's vulnerable and nobody wants to think of people seeing them on camera and all
Yeah,
those
I
things.
was I was very trepidatious, and I'm uncomfortable and awkward about it. And also the other part was revisiting it all, going back to that time and living through it again. I realized that I had kind of blocked it out, because
Mm,
I don't want to go back there.
yeah,
But it's important to revisit it, to recognize the strides that you've made and why they've succeeded. And, what have you done that's brought you to this place, to remind you that you have to keep working at it, because
yeah,
same things that existed, which created the cancer, you can't allow to creep up. And if you do, it's those people who go back to the way things were and they relax, that the cancer recurs, because you've created that same environment internally that's hospitable to the cancer growth.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, if somebody is just now getting diagnosed with endometrial cancer, and they are listening to this testimonial right now, what would you say to them?
I would say don't panic and try not to let fear guide your decisions. Take a moment, breathe. The cancer's most likely taken years to grow. So even though they're telling you it's urgent and you have to act immediately, you don't, unless it's life-threatening, and you do, but most cases you don't. So just take a step back and think about your options, do your research, talk to different integrative oncologists, naturopaths, and get the information you need so that you can be in control of your health, be your own health advocate, trust your instincts, you know, and create your care team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And another question that I've been asking is, we think about quality of life, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your quality of life before your cancer diagnosis, and how would you rate it now?
1 to 10, did you say that, or did I
One
just
to
make that?
10, yeah.
Okay. I would say 5 before. I was just under stress all the time, in fight or flight all the time. So, and 10 being the best, I would
Mhm.
say I'm probably like an 8.5.
Wow, that's amazing.
Definitely improved. I mean, I have way to go. But I'm happy I have a much better quality of life now. I'm healthier than I was then. And I'm very grateful for the whole journey, because it's just given me a new perspective.
Yeah,
And I practice gratitude every day, even it's just to thank the birds for singing in the morning or a beautiful sunset at night. But I don't take any day for granted, you
yeah.
know.
Thank you for that reminder. That's one
Yeah.
of my New Year's resolution, is to practice gratitude more.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to remember to do, but I imagine when you wake up and you're 3 years past your expiration date, it makes
Yeah.
it much easier to
Oh
remember
yeah.
to do it.
Yeah. Life is, a gift.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to say?
I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this, to help me get my story out, in hopes that even if it resonates with one person,
Yeah,
um, I'm happy with that.
yeah, yeah. Well,
And
thank you
happy
so much.
50th.
Yeah, yeah. Few
Yeah.
months.
Okay.
Holding on
It's
strong.
a year-long celebration.
That's very true. It's very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I know I'll be talking to you again. You are part of our community, and I love seeing you. I love meeting you. Love meeting your son as well. And
Yeah. I'm very grateful for you and the whole community. So
yeah.
thank you.